Back in 2015, I read about a woman named Carla Lewis of Knoxville, Tennessee. You can read her story, originally published in that city's daily newspaper, archived at a site that's linked from my Evernote blog. What makes her story worth reading is the fact that she began life as a boy named Justin, and the struggles she's had to endure before and since finally transitioning and making her outside match what she had always felt she was inside. Her story can be a hair-raising one in spots. Before her transition, she had been a married father of two. The woman to whom Justin was married knew about this, shall we say, peculiarity, and was able to deal with it. Or so Justin thought. That was until said woman went one fine day and cleaned out their bank account, swept up their children, and ran off with a man she'd met online. And then, just to add grievous insult to already serious injury, she stopped off at her husband's workplace on the way out of town and told all his co-workers that her husband was gay and liked to wear women's clothing. Only the latter half of this was true, but this made no difference. Evidently, years of frustration because the man she thought she'd married wasn't really a man at all led her to this act of unspeakable cruelty. Discharged from the military on a mental disorder rap as a blackmail risk, abandoned by a spouse after years of marriage, robbed of both children and resources, the man who would become Carla reached a mental and emotional state that addicts in recovery like to call hitting bottom. And so on Thursday, June 24th, 1999, this tormented soul took 240 sleeping pills dissolved in a glass of Kool-Aid and attempted suicide. And as the rancid, rotting cherry atop this misery Sunday, while she recuperated from the attempt in a hospital, her home was burglarized and everything of value she still owned stolen. Literally losing everything. Your family, your job, your home, your car, everything you own but the clothes on your back, because of something about you that you did not ask for, cannot change, and that harms no one, unless you count the departed, disgruntled, dishonest ex, is a pretty hard place to come back from. She very nearly didn't. But today she has. Not only has she finally and successfully transitioned to living full-time as a woman, down to the reassignment surgery, she has found a new home, a new success as an entrepreneur, or should that be entrepreneuse, and a much better wife. And she's working to help and organize others like her, who might be struggling with gender dysphoria or other sexuality and gender issues in her area. And she makes a pretty damn hot-looking woman, despite the limitations a genetically male physique had imposed on her transition. To top it all off, she's gone viral on Facebook, gaining thousands of new friends and more support than she ever imagined possible, by simply posing in a t-shirt printed with the words, "Transgender Veteran, I fought for your right to hate me." Compelling as all this is, however, it isn't the main reason for this commentary. What prompted me to write this was a couple of paragraphs from that news story on Carla. Quote, "In addition to helping the transgender community, Carla tries to educate non-transgender people about what it means to be transgender. It is proven by science," she says, "that all humans start out female, and that the brain and the body can develop at different rates, which makes it possible for a person with a female-structured brain to be born with male genitalia, and vice versa. But spouting science to a culture that doesn't believe in science doesn't work, so I try to justify my existence to them through my humanity," Carla says. "I'm a person, and what I do doesn't affect you." Unquote. The first sentence of that second paragraph was what hit me especially hard. Spouting science to a culture that doesn't believe in science doesn't work. Carla was talking about the culture she and I were both born and raised in, the culture of the United States of America. And that made me even sadder than reading about all the horrible things that happened to her on the way to her life as it is now. You see, once upon a time, a long, long time ago, no, strike that, it wasn't all that long ago, but within my lifetime, and I'm only in my sixth decade, the United States of America had a culture that definitely, absolutely did believe in science. Oh, sure, there were a few cranks here and there who ranted against it for one reason or another. But as a whole, the USA of those days not only believed in science, but excelled at it. And because of this belief and this excellence, we ended smallpox and polio. We put human beings on the moon, an international space station in orbit, and robotic probes all over the rest of the solar system. We created the personal computer, the internet, and a whole new industry. Several industries, in fact, to go with them. We built an interstate highway system that was and remains the envy of the world, even as its bridges and roads fall into disrepair due to money-driven neglect. And we achieved a whole bunch of other things that would have seemed nothing short of miraculous to the founding fathers and mothers who birthed this country. But the operative word here is had, past tense. That was decades ago, before science started telling people in the USA things they emphatically did not want to hear. About the origins of the universe, our planet and the life on it, including us. About pollution, climate change, and their effects on other species, our bodies, and the environment. About sexuality and gender identity. Things that in their view flew in the face of common sense and everything their parents, their teachers, and especially their church leaders had taught them was good and right and proper. Remember that 1925 trial in Tennessee, the so-called monkey trial, in which a high school teacher was prosecuted for teaching kids the bald truth, which, as the late science fiction grandmaster Robert Heinlein sagely noted, is a capital offense in any society. That was only the beginning of a decades-long effort, deliberate, purposeful, and with malice aforethought, to discredit, disempower, and destroy science. To be fair, some of it was accidental, I hope. The gradual result of cut after cut to school budgets by short-sighted politicians who deemed such cuts easier and cheaper than, horrors, raising taxes, slashing teacher pay, increasing class sizes, eliminating frivolous subjects like art and music. All this ruined what was once the greatest educational system the world has ever seen. But an awful lot of it was absolutely intentional. Some of it was done by religious moralists, fearful of having their faith challenged by new data, and of living in a society evolving into something wholly alien to them. Some of it was by aging middle-class workers, convinced government was taking away more and more of their hard-earned income and giving it to lazy moochers. Some was by private businesses, officers, and owners, desperate to keep anyone, especially government regulators, from realizing what they were doing to their workers, their customers, and the planet, whether through their products, such as guns, tobacco, and drugs, shoddy safety practices, unjust labor policies, or contaminating our air, water, and food. And some was by wealthy members of the donor class, mass media figures, political activists, and elected officials, cynically manipulating all three of these other groups and their views in order to advance or preserve their own careers and fortunes. All of which has brought us, as inexorably as night follows day, to where we are now, with a national culture that, as Carla Lewis observes, no longer believes in or trusts science. A culture where parents are willing to endanger thousands of lives due to a repeatedly debunked, utterly specious link between vaccines and autism. A culture that can seriously consider electing to the most powerful office in the world men who believe, or at least claim to, that evolution is a lie, climate change is a massive con game, and the pyramids were built to hold grain stores. That last from an actual MD, no less. And now is actually elected the worst one of them all. A culture that passes laws requiring that grade schools teach Christian creation myths as an actual scientific hypothesis for the origin of the world and its life. A culture that can petition the courts to overrule the leaders of a major city, in enacting and then gin up voters to help them repeal an ordinance designed to provide 15 different classes of people protection from discrimination, with the baseless cry, "No men in women's bathrooms." And a culture that can revile, ostracize, and persecute people like Chelsea Manning, Caitlyn Jenner, Laverne Cox, and Carla Lewis for the so-called crime of demanding the freedom to be and be treated as their true selves, even when they have violated no law, because of people who categorically refuse to see them as anything but, quote, sick and disturbed men, unquote. And I observe all this, and I fear for Carla, for those like her, and for my country. Even more so now, in this time of coronavirus, when we are literally paying for this kind of culture with our lives. I'm Matt G. Leger, and that's my 2 cents.